Excuse me, we're back in session, ma'am. Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, we are going to jump to item 49. We're going to try to move the entire afternoon into the morning. We'll see, but for certain, the first two. Item 49. Let me read it into the record. Government Relations to approve an economic development incentive grant to assist Project Sunshine, which is a code name, with expenses related to expanding the existing business into Sarasota County in an amount not to exceed $825,000, subject to the board's approval of a financial incentive agreement with the county. Rob's going to start us off, and then Erin Silk from EDC is going to help us with the rest of it.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. For the record, Rob Lewis, Director of Governmental Relations. And with me today is Lisa Kraus, the President of the EDC, and Erin Silk, Vice President of the EDC, who you'll hear from in a moment. We're here this morning to present to the board for consideration an economic development incentive application that was received and processed by the EDC called Project Sunshine. I won't go into the details of the project. Erin will be doing that for you in a few moments. I did want to note that the authority to approve and award an economic development grant rests solely with the Board of County Commissioners. Project Sunshine is seeking a grant of $825,000 payable over 9 years for 165 new jobs. I do want to spend a minute just to give the board some context and assurance in terms of the fund balance. The current fund balance of the economic development funds is adequate to commit to this grant. Note that all $825,000 of the grant, if the board were to direct us to move forward, would need to be committed. However, any future grant request would require additional funding be appropriated by the board should anything come forward beyond this. To be clear, this is the money that comes from your economic development fund, not the day-to-day operating funds, which are revenue sourced by the local business tax and a per capita contribution. So this grant has nothing to do with taking money from that day-to-day operational bucket. I did want to note that a financial incentive grant agreement is attached. We've paid particular attention to that since I've moved into some of this role, so that the board has a sense of what that agreement would look like when it came back for final execution. I do want to note one thing, and Erin will speak to it a little bit more detail. We learned last week, after the board packet had been put together, that the company has a different arrangement with their employees. Erin will describe that. But what I wanted to make sure the board was comfortable knowing is that between the time that the board approved us moving forward, if you do so today, and coming back as a second item to execute an agreement, that we will work on very specific language that will have to meet the test of ensuring compliance before any pay for performance were issued. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll answer any quick questions or introduce Erin Silk, who's the Vice President for the EDC, to go into greater detail.
Erin, you're up.
Good morning, Commission.
Yeah, fix that, Erin. Yes, so we can see you, hear you.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be in front of you all today. For the record, my name is Erin Silk. I am Vice President of Business Development Services for the Economic Development Corporation of Sarasota County. Rob set this presentation up very well. I appreciate his comments. I think it's also important to note that if approved today, this grant does not affect any other previously committed monies from the EDIF fund. As always, we start with the Economic Development Corporation's mission, which is to grow, diversify, sustain the economy of Sarasota County while enhancing our unique cultural and natural environment. But what does that mean? The EDC is the only organization in Sarasota County focused solely on growing and diversifying the economy of the entire county. About 1/3 of all local jobs are in construction, retail, hospitality, and food service. And these sectors can be especially vulnerable to economic downturns. And that's why the EDC is working hard to grow our diversifying industries, those who are not local market dependent, and help protect our economy against external shocks. So today I'm here to present to you an Economic Development Incentive Fund grant application that has been received. This is a confidential project, codenamed Project Sunshine. This project came to us through Enterprise Florida in August of this year. We've been working with this company on a variety of things. Per our usual service, which you could describe as a business concierge of sorts, we've assisted this company with all things related to their expansion, including registration requirements, speaking to their team about school system, residential areas for their employees, helping them understand the local healthcare system, referrals to business service providers, and more. Anything that you can imagine an international company would need as they're creating their U.S. headquarters here in Sarasota County. So the application comes from a Canadian tech company who is experiencing fast growth. They provide a service for content creators. They're currently located in Canada, and the grant application is for the establishment of their U.S. headquarters. So they will keep their office in Canada, and this will be their first U.S. office, and it will be their U.S. headquarters. Per the application, they are committed to creating 165 new tech jobs in Sarasota County over the next 5 years. Those jobs have an average wage of over $102,000, which for the purposes of this program, that meets the threshold of 200% the average annual MSA wage of about $91,000. The job creation is broken down this way. It's 41 management positions at an average wage of $170,000 and 124 non-management at $80,000. Under the program guidelines, this makes them eligible for a $5,000 per job grant totaling at $825,000. On your screen, you'll see a sample payout schedule for this grant. As the jobs are created within our community, not only do they have to prove that they are created, they have to prove that they are maintained. And that will be done on a yearly reporting to county staff. And so what you see in front of you is how that payout will look over the next 10 years. This project meets the exact criteria for establishing economic development grants. It is a growing technology and creative industries company. It is creating high-wage jobs and investing in our community. The project creates fantastic opportunities for our talent coming out of our local schools. The company described a best-case scenario where they would have a tight-knit working relationship with our local higher education to feed their development team. They envision co-developing curriculum, participating in school career fairs, sponsoring programs, and more. The company anticipates strong growth over the next 5 years. And for me, this project is exciting because it sends a clear message to growing companies, both nationally and internationally, that Sarasota County is a place built for serious business success. Just to touch on a point that Rob mentioned in his opening remarks, we've been working with the company through a variety of things as we've led up to this point. The company is using what's called a PEO for their employment payroll processing. We mention it because within the financial agreement that you have in front of you, it states that the company has to provide an RT6 for the yearly reporting. We just want to let you know that I'm working with the company and the PEO directly to make sure that we come to a clear understanding for the reporting requirements for this grant. I've worked directly with this company since August. I've been working with their PEO. I can tell this board I've worked with a lot of companies in my 2.5, 3 years with the EDC. This has been one of the most responsive, collaborative, and an excited company that I've had the opportunity to work with through this process. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation and open up for any questions.
Okay, we have Commissioner Moran on the board. I'm going to have something for you, but I'll speak last, as I should. Commissioner Moran, thank you, by the way. That was well done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Aaron. First off, any of my comments, please, it is not a reflection on you and the new leadership. Honestly, sometimes I can get pretty passionate about this. It is no reflection towards you, but there is some devil in the details here that I think are incredibly important, like super important, like deal breaker important for me, and hopefully we can get through it. A couple of things to set the stage here is in the contract, we are going to encumber $825,000, but contractually they are required to only do a minimum of 10 employees. Is that a fair summary?
To be eligible to apply for this program, there is a 10 job creation minimum. That's correct.
But as Rob mentioned, we have to encumber the $825,000 for roughly 9 years, or unless the contract stops. And Rob, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I see you nodding your head. The intent of this, I think, the intent of this agreement is these folks are going to be Sarasota County residents working at the facility. It mentions it over and over in the agreement. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Okay. What troubles me is the contract has a massive, gaping, humongous loophole that they don't have to, though, do they? Hire them here in Sarasota County.
I thank you for that point, and we have an opportunity to adjust the contract that's before you. So I think this is an important conversation. If there are pieces that we can include in it to make this board feel better about that contract, we'll be happy to, and I'll defer to Rob here.
Thank you, Aaron. Mr. Chairman, just to further on Aaron's comments, what's before the board today is the request to approve us moving forward with an agreement. And as I said, there's some details that I want to be assured, personally assured, are taken care of before we bring a contract back to the board for execution. So to be certain, any of the direction we get from the board today and anything we already are aware of, we're going to work diligently to ensure is reflected in that contract before I feel comfortable bringing something back to you to execute.
Fair enough. Where I think we need to settle here and take some time and make sure this board understands what we're approving here, or what's before us, I should say. What's before us, which I am a hard no if we don't change a couple of these paragraphs. And I'll spell them out for you. On page 1217, page 1217, under section 4.4, it says the company shall undertake its best efforts. Not that it must. It says it shall undertake its best efforts to fill not less than 50%. So it's not even all. They're only to take their best efforts for 50% of the employees to reside in Sarasota County. So what's before us, I want to make sure I'm clear on this, and I might need help from legal on this, is that if we sign and execute this contract and go forward, when you get that PEO, payroll register, and you ask them for it, and it has people that live in Boston, LA, Chicago, Detroit, is we are still going to give Sarasota County taxpayer money of $5,000 each on those. That's what this contract says. Am I misinterpreting this?
No, I think right now that provision is aspirational. It's not mandatory that there be residents of Sarasota County, and it only applies to 50%, as you pointed out. So
Okay.
The way it's written now, that's correct.
And it expresses that in section 4.4, and then again, I believe, and this is just on the surface, and again on section 6.1. Here's what I think the intent, and we need to have deep board discussion on this if it's not the intent, is the intent is for them to put their facility here. And I'll even go a step further, is the EDC has a regional interlocal agreement with Manatee County and Charlotte County, is that even if they hire the folks in Manatee County, Sarasota County, and Charlotte County, if we're going to believe in this regional concept of economic development, which again, as we sit, has an interlocal agreement between Manatee, Sarasota, and Charlotte County for non-competes. I've made myself heard on that in the past. Is that at a minimum, in my most liberal moment, is they have to live in Manatee County, Sarasota County, or Charlotte County if we're going to give a penny. Now, if you ask me, I want it to be a Sarasota County resident, period. But I'm open to discussion on this if we're going to have this regional discussion. Is that the way this sits now is they hand us a payroll register and we are going to be paying for up to 80 plus employees that don't even live within hundreds and hundreds of miles of Sarasota County. I just have a serious issue with it. So,
Keep
sorry?
going. No, finish, and then Commissioner Ziegler is next.
Okay.
No worries.
They've already leased the property, it's my understanding, right?
Yes.
They're already committed to Sarasota County, and I'm not suggesting that alters my thoughts in this in any way. I'm just trying to make sure I understand it's on the record. They've already leased and are committed to Sarasota County, at least for a 5-year lease.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chair, that's good for now. Thank you.
Commissioner Ziegler.
Yeah, I think what Commissioner Moran's touching on is something we talked about as well during our meeting. And I guess I don't know if you could do it residing in. I think that's tough because I do know where their office is, and I can tell you it's kind of basically on the line between two counties. So I think the residency's tough to say just Sarasota County. In a perfect world, that's what we want. But I think you could do something in the contract about where they work and where that office is. I know they're going to have to basically live in Manatee, Sarasota, or Charlotte, maybe Hillsborough a little bit. But I think you could do it based on where they work. I think that'd be a little bit easier than basically where they reside because people pack up and move all the time and bounce between the counties, especially the demographic that they're going to be targeting. So I think the residency's tough, but I think you could do, in-person, physical, in the office, some sort of requirement there. But I do understand what Commissioner Moran's going at. Aaron, first of all, I just want to thank you. I mean, I think you're doing a great job, and whoever decided to start putting you forward a little bit more to do briefings and to present before the board, they're pretty smart as well, because I think that, in the meetings and the interactions we've had have been pretty good. And I think you do a great job in the role that you're in now. So congratulations with, I don't know how it works internally or whoever made those decisions, but I think it was a good one. Now, this was a lead that was generated by Enterprise Florida, correct? And then basically that's the state's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the state's EDC, if you will, at the state level. And they basically had this lead where this company's interested in moving into the state. And then they kicked it to us because they expressed some interest in being into our area. Is that fair to say?
That's correct, yes.
Is it public at all where that office is, where they're talking about putting their office, specifically in what area of the county?
Not yet.
Is it protected by confidentiality?
The office location is on Longboat Key.
Okay, so on Longboat Key. So just looking at this, what's interesting is you have a tech company that, again, has about 160, and this is separate from the incentive discussion, but I'm just talking economics and the economic benefit here, is you have a tech company wanting to open up their U.S. headquarters in not just Sarasota County, but on Longboat Key, which, I mean, if anyone that's been out to Longboat outside of hotels, we have a couple restaurants, and my mom lived on Longboat, so, I mean, we got a Publix out there. There's a bank, but there isn't much business out there because it's more of a retirement community / tourist community. But you have a tech company looking at opening up their U.S. headquarters on Longboat Key with 165 jobs on an average of $102,000 a year, I think is what you said. 124 of those jobs at $80,000, 41 of those jobs at $170,000. They're expected to get this job creation over 5 years. That's pretty exciting. I mean, if you just look at it in terms of the economic benefit to Sarasota County. Now, that is separate from the incentive discussion and some of the issues that we're going to talk about today or bring up. But for Longboat Key, I mean, they're so used to having traffic go off the island in the morning. It'll be interesting to have traffic come on the island and then off later. To be able to have a U.S. headquarters on Longboat Key, I think that's pretty unique, and it's a unique opportunity. So that is exciting. That's an area I represent, an area I'm very familiar with. As I mentioned, my mom lived on Longboat Key for a while. I spent a lot of time out there. And I think it'll be great for Longboat Key and for people out there, and the potential of this tech company growing, I think, is there, and that would be huge for our area. But also to be able to work with, I think you mentioned like Ringling and some of these other opportunities locally, to be able to generate content. I mean, there's tremendous upside. Now, again, that is just the economic benefit of bringing that company here. That is separate from the incentive. My understanding is the incentive balance is about $1 million, isn't it?
Yes.
What is it, 1.1 or something like that? Or do we know what the total is, Rob? That's left in there. And again, this is the amount of monies, when we had the discussion earlier about the EDC that we kept in there. Do we have the totals? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, so it's about $1 million.
Let me take a minute, just, Mr. Chairman, if I might. Commissioner, you're right on point here. And let me take a minute to identify what's in front of you. This was coordinated through OFM, so I'm pretty confident of the numbers. They're in the process of following up on board direction to transfer and leave $1 million in the fund. As we sit here, there's 2.6, which means about 1.6 would be transferred back into the general fund. There was action direction from the board previously on another project. I won't go into that detail, but there's adequate funds for that. Leaving as board direction $1 million in the fund. There are some of the commitments that have happened over the course of the year that draw that money down. You'll see a subtotal of projects approved if this action was taken today that would encumber about $1,027,000. It looks like on that paper that we would be 27.5 underwater, but that's not really the case. We have a number of projects that we'll be bringing back to the board, actually as part of my strategic plan this year, that will close out. They predate me, they predate everyone on this board, and we've seen no action on those, and that accounts for about another $520,000. So long answer to your question, but it's important for the record for you to understand that there will be about $520,000 left in that fund at the end of all of those actions. But
That's assuming that this gets approved, right?
oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
completely contingent on that.
Okay, so
Thank
you're
you.
saying basically we have $1 million to basically dish out from the incentive fund.
There's
And
adequate
then, but then
funds.
it's going to get replenished from some of these projects that are outstanding that didn't hit their marks. And then that money is going to get transferred over and freed up. Is that right? That's the first
Mr. Chairman,
I've
for
heard
my
of this.
commissioner, yeah, that's one of my objectives this year is to clean up some of the projects that were there that predate us. I will make one more note. This board, as an effort to provide a bridge for local businesses, did $4.1 million in small business loans. $500,000 of that has been converted to a grant per the board's direction, which left 3.6 to collect. We've collected almost 2.5 million, or about 69% of that money so far, and we've still got 2.5 years to go before the terms of those loans run out. So we will continue to bring cash repaid to the county on those loans over the next couple of years, but thank you.
Okay, so
Just let me interrupt you 1 second. Rob, I still need to see the commissioners get no to someone, through someone, and then 5 paragraphs. Just the math exercise of it started at 4.2, we forgave 20%, that's what's left. 2.6 has been, just that simple math. So when we have a discussion in the future, because something great comes by, we know the possibility of the place to get some of that money from with a majority vote of the commission.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Very good point. The numbers you see reflected here that we've coordinated through OFM reflect what we've collected today, but we can expand that if we were to come back with future projects so that the board sees the full context of what was lent, what's been prepaid, what we expect to have paid back.
Because it's an incredible compliment to the businesses that use that.
It is,
fund.
Mr. Chairman, and I'll have to credit my team as well. My staff's worked very hard on this. We've become
Absolutely.
very focused on loan processing.
So, no, that's good. I think that's a good point. As you clean that up, as you do your cleanup with some of these outstanding projects, I know Commissioner Moran would probably love it, but I know I would, I'd like to see the list of the agreements, the date they were agreed to, how much was committed, how much was executed, but then how much basically was outstanding, which is the jobs that weren't fulfilled and how much total that was. I'd like to see that breakdown as you do this. That would be helpful. Look, this, I'm not crazy about incentives. I've been very, very clear since I've been on this board. Personally, I think it's the place sells itself. With that said, we kind of had the agreement when we discussed the EDC a couple months back, was we were going to leave $1 million in it and then, draw that down and then deal with it after that, how you replenish it and how do you approve projects and everything else. So I'm not going to keep fighting on that, I guess. But I'm okay with drawing down that $1 million for projects that make sense. Again, this is a tech company looking to put their U.S. headquarters in Longboat Key, 165 jobs at $100,000, 124 at $80,000, or break down that 165 at an average of 102. That's the total. But then when you break that down, 124 at 80 and 41 at 170, we're going to have a tech headquarters here in Sarasota County. I personally, I think there's so much untapped potential when you talk about specifically on the north end of the county with Ringling and the arts, and I think we're missing that tech aspect, which, that part of that formula, and this might help with that. And I know there's some digital marketing programs out of UCF or USF that they've recently launched there, and I know up in Manatee with the college up there, they have some programs that they've added, and I think being able to bring a legitimate, large potential employer here with their headquarters, this might be something that we look back in 10, 20 years, and it's pretty impressive that they came here and launched here. So when I look at the $1 million, what I would want to allocate towards it is basically a project just like this in a perfect world, and that's what we have before us. But again, I think we'll have to have harder discussions once we draw that money down. I mean, it sounds like you're going to replenish it a little bit. But once that fund starts really getting down, then the board's going to have real tough decisions, because then we're going to have to find money to allocate for incentives if that's what we want to keep doing.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, Commissioner Ziegler raises a very important point that was a task that we undertook not too long after this work was placed under me, and that was the verification of the dollar amounts that have been awarded in the past, the verification of the jobs that have been created in the past, the verification of the dollars that we had remaining in each of those projects. And so what you heard me mention is the back end of that cleanup. But at the front end of that, to Commissioner Ziegler's point and his credit, we have, and I can send to the board a link, a public-facing link where the public can go to each project, drill down, look at when it was awarded, look at the copy of the contract, look at the performance of that, and review that individually. So we'll provide that to the board again.
Yes, that's, we have Commissioner Ziegler then.
Yeah, just real quick, and when we do that, I think maybe just add another column, for the total amount of jobs, maybe not created, but then the money returned. I think that would be kind of interesting, because what that does showcase is this board, before I was on this board, I don't remember exactly when it was or who was here, decided to change the way the incentive program worked, and instead of prepaying, it was basically you pay for performance. And really what those numbers are going to show is the risk that was there in the potential risk, because that money would have been paid out under a previous plan, and we may not have gotten that back. And now this was just basically committed on paper, but it was sitting there on the side. But now we're able to free up almost $500,000. Just so you know, I don't know, maybe you guys were on this board. I mean, that's $500,000. Hopefully you guys get the credit and the recognition for that, because that's $500,000 that you prevented from being wasted out there, that we may not, probably most likely wouldn't have gotten back if you did not make that adjustment in the policy. And again, that was before I got on the board, so I can't take any credit for that. But whoever was here, thank you, because I think Commissioner, I'm assuming all three to the left did that. But I think that's really worth pointing out, Rob, and if we include that in that spreadsheet, I think it'll highlight that going forward as well, the value of that policy being put in place. But thanks, appreciate it, Rob.
Commissioner Kutzinger and then Commissioner Dieter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I enthusiastically support this, and I think it's a great project to bring to Sarasota County. I think for a lot of reasons. It's one of our targeted industries. It's a company headquarters, which is, we've been saying this is a great place to bring your company headquarters. It is high-paying, high-quality, resilient year-round jobs that help diversify the economy. It takes us into an area where we've been saying for a long time, you know, high-tech companies could really flourish here. And for us, it puts us on the map. It helps other high-tech companies see what they've done and look at that and say, hey, maybe Sarasota someplace I ought to take a look at. So I think from that perspective, the other thing I've said for many years is, and you know, my boys and a lot of other families have seen their kids grow up here in Sarasota, but then not be able to land a high-paying, high-quality job and move throughout the country. And so what we have here is a company that has already said, hey, we're going to work with the schools. We're looking to hire some of those, you know, excellent graduates. I think, you know, Ringling School is one of the highest demand graduates in the country, but they get hired away. And so we want them to find a place. And this is, you know, along with our other schools, is a great opportunity for them to collaborate, work together, help. You know, you talked about, you know, getting these kids focused on that type of industry and finding a place for them to land here in Sarasota County. So I wholeheartedly support this. Having said that, you know, a couple of things that I think, you know, Commissioner Moran brings up, I think we do need to spend some time discussing, you know, what that actually looks like. And so a couple of things, and I don't know that there's anything we can do here, but to encumber the whole 825 and have to hold that out for 10 years is, for me, it's a struggle. You know, the present value of money as a financial advisor, to have to kind of lock that up for 10 years when this is a payout over that period of time is challenging, and I don't know that we can do anything about that. I will say, as Rob mentioned, we've got $2.4 million that has come back from those EDIF loans that went out, so we're talking about future projects and bringing this down, you know, to almost zero through this project. There are opportunities, I think, that we can look at going forward for how we can, if we move forward with other projects, we can maybe look at some ways to help replenish those funds.
Commissioner,
But-
whoops, sorry, you all done there,
But
buddy?
no, I do have a question, and I just want to clarify Commissioner Moran's comments on, one, the regional thing. You know, obviously we want them all to move to Sarasota, but boy, it's hard to find everything in Sarasota right now. So the regional thing, I think I certainly would be okay with that, but I am concerned about the issue of, you know, giving investment dollars to employees that don't live here. If they're just going to hire folks throughout the country and we're giving investment dollars, that's problematic for me. So I would like to talk that through a little bit and get a little more information about, you know, how do we, you know, if we invest those dollars, how do we make sure that those dollars are staying where those investments are being made? So that would be an interesting discussion for me.
Okay, Commissioner Dieter, then Moran, then Ziegler again.
Okay, there's a whole bunch of things here. Everyone seems pretty excited about the project, and I think with all the good publicity that Sarasota has gotten nationwide and even internationally, a lot more people are interested in us. And so your job may change from recruitment to just rolling out the red carpet and helping them come here, because what you basically are is our Commerce Department, which is what Enterprise Florida is too, because it's constantly renamed. Just they renamed the Commerce Department up there because it was failing. I think the board, while applauding your efforts and applauding this particular project, needs to face the fact that we are also at the same time choking off all of your source of revenue, which was business taxes. Very small. I paid it for 25 years and never amounted to anything. And I don't know if it was going to be a third reduction until it was down to zero, so then you're down to zero, other than whatever small amount your board pays. And surprisingly, in that discussion with you yesterday, they're paying a lot more than I thought they were paying to be board members, and that's fine. So I think we need to have, as a board, I think we need to review everything that's gone on. You know, unfortunately, there was a cloud over the organization, and now you guys have to make it a sunny day for us. And that's almost a miracle. But this is a good project to start with. I would ask Rob, and I'm sure I would have agreement on this board, to really go over this contract with a fine-tooth comb, because now we're adding a new wrinkle with this contract that the employees are leased employees. So you don't even know if you've got the same employee you started with that you got funded for. And this contract, because of the high wages that they're offering, they are at our highest incentive level. So we're going to be giving you the highest incentive that we have, and I want to make sure it's not for Canadians that you brought with you for your startup, and that could last a year or two before you even hire one person from Sarasota. So I think we need a lot of tightening up on our contract, and to say it's negotiable scares me. That's a negotiating tool. That should be in every contract that we do. There's also a clause in there that if you don't retain the person, out of the $5,000 you got, you'd have to give back $2,000. Well, you should have to give back $5,000. I mean, in my humble opinion, but with the employee leasing wrinkle and the fact that it's negotiable, it really shouldn't be. This should be our contract for everybody, and probably to go with our attorney and try to tighten up that. I'm glad that you're going to have the $2.5 million that I think is the repayment from the CARES Act money. People that had loans and are repaying it, is that going to go back to EDC?
Mr. Chairman, if I'm right, to be clear, the monies that are coming back through the small business resiliency loans, which predated CARES by a few weeks, was dispersed and appropriated and dispersed by this board from that Economic Development Incentive Fund. It's never been within the control or purview of the EDC. What they did at the board's direction was come back with a recommendation in 2020 on how to bridge some small business recovery. And so the board enacted that small business loan program. So those funds are not operating funds for the EDC. They come back to the county. They were dispersed as an economic development fund source. So I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on that for the board and for anyone watching.
Okay.
I don't want to use reserves because that's the wrong word, but if you could think of it as a dedicated source of revenue that's kept in a fund balance as opposed to the operating monies, so it will not, the approval or not of the board on this project will have no bearing on the day-to-day operational costs or reimbursements to the EDC from this board.
Because as they shape shift in order to service some technological world and a new way of doing business, I just want to see them be able to survive. I mean, it's really hard to do your job if you think your job is going to be expiring soon. So we can all cheer this project, and then maybe another project's going to come along, and we hardly have any staff to service you, and we don't have any incentive money. The incentives I have a history with because I've seen various iterations of the theme. What killed off the film incentives were the people that came in and encumbered all the money in like a day, because they could say, I'm doing a TV series and it's going to run for 5 years, so you have to encumber 5 years worth of money. Well, your TV series never got renewed. You locked up 5 years worth of money and never used it, and then deprived other people of using it. So we've got to, as we review the way we do business, we've got to figure out some encumbering this money, because when I saw the dollar amount, I thought, I know they only have around $1 million. You're going to take $825, But then the good news should be that that's over a period of time, so the first couple of years, it's not all that much money. So those things have to be worked out. But I really want to see some real clear language on how we track employee leasing as to the name of the employee, how much they're getting paid, what the benefits are, and how do we track that employee.
Okay, I'm going to take a turn because everybody's cycling through again. First of all, it was a great presentation. Erin, I met you, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, and you are a great addition to EDC. Secondly, I want to clear up for our massive television audience that EDC is still running at full complement of money, and that is through and including September 30th, 2022. And then at that point, this commission will decide whether the first 1/3 reduction kicks in. Next, I agree with just about everything that was said here. This is all very exciting. I want us, as we drill down on this, which is our job, to send a very clear message to firms like this that we are very excited that they're coming. And so much for the comment that some of us who voted no got beat up for, that we'll never again attract a corporate headquarters because we turned one down. This is proof that this is an attractive place, and we love for them to come. I'll take a slightly different spin, though. I don't think I care, as just one vote, whether they bring people from Canada to become permanent employees here, because I love them. $170,000, they'll be the ones buying our $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 houses. And all the money we get in annuity from all those ad valorem taxes, us, the school board, and the other groups. I think a lot of this is an accounting exercise and a math exercise. Commissioner Kutzinger makes has presented the thought, it's too bad that for 10 years we got to lock away this $825,000. I agree with that, but it's not necessarily locked away. It's still staying in our treasury, and it must be getting invested. I read the investment reports. Commissioner Kutzinger, is the investment guru, and it's not money that's lost or locked away, and we're getting no return on it at all. I also think that let's keep fresh in our minds that as we charge EDC with a major turnaround, which I got to tell you, I spent a lot of time with those folks. That major turnaround is very much in process. That when we start getting rezonings for OPI, office, professional, and institutional, how would you like this thought, exactly the type of buildings these folks are going in. When we get options, rezonings for business park, and when we get options for ILW, because some headquarters companies will come with a complement that they need some warehouse space for the packaging and the distribution. This is where it has to be a comprehensive program, and the onus is on us to not forget that we are the gatekeepers. We are the only gatekeepers on OPI Business Park and ILW. So with all that said, I still, and Rob is just great. I have a lot of meetings with Rob. We need a clear accounting, which Rob was the guy we dispatched 2 years ago to go through with his staff. I see one of your staff members sitting behind you. I bet she did all the work. Going through every single contract to see where the heck we stood, and he did that. And that's how this cleanup continues. I got to tell you, we need a sheet of paper. Don't expect everybody who's not intimately involved with this to understand when we talk about the grants we gave, and this number of people already repaid 80%, so they got 20% forgiven, and that leaves this much. And just, Mr. County Administrator, even if you make it a separate attachment, it's blinding sometimes, necessary for tracking, blinding when we get an email from one department director through another department director, through you, and then there's 2 pages of historical reflections, just the meat, the numbers, so that when we're sitting here and some of us, and it was me the other day with you privately, start wringing our hands, whoa, when this money's gone, where are we going to get more money? The hand wringing is backed up with some factual numbers. So please help me with that. And I'm sorry for being so animated and so long-winded. Moran and then Ziegler.
Oh, no, it's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to get down a little more detail again on this just for a minute. First off, I really want to make this work, Aaron. I really do. And I think for this board, it might be as simple as making this contingent on this agreement where these folks need to reside in Sarasota County. We can talk if we want to deviate from that a little bit. I'm totally open to the conversation. But it's as simple as they need to reside in Sarasota County. And let me give you an example. Rob, could I have you for one more minute? I'll give you an example of how easy and how complex this can be. Rob, when your office, this is a projection of 43 employees in the first year, if you get the report from the PEO and you get the report, the way this contract sits now, if you look at the employees on the 43 employees, and a third of them are for Boston, a third of them for LA, and a third of them are from Toronto, is the way this contract sits, you're going to pay close to $250,000 in incentives. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Absolutely.
To be clear, Commissioner, first of all, we understand your question. I think it's very valid. And that's why I said at the front end, we learned after this template had been provided in the board packet about the employee leasing arrangement. And so, yes, we will need to rewrite a contract or provisions of a contract for future consideration and or execution by the board.
Yeah, but Rob, what I'm
to
talking
take that into account.
What-
And so I've got to find that language that addresses that.
Okay, Commissioner Moran, go ahead.
Rob, I think, I don't think we need to get that deep. You are going to get a report that has somebody that has an address in Toronto, Canada, and you are going to have to cut a check for $5,000, the way this contract sits. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, yes.
Okay. What I'm suggesting is this is how quick that fix can be. In Section 4.4 and Section 6.1, you say, when you grab that report, it better have their address, say Sarasota County. That's what I'm like. It's not for you, Rob, but I'm saying that's how simple and how complex it can be for staff. Staff is going to get that report from this employer, and if it has people, if it does have people from LA, Boston, they're going to need programmers that might not be here. The programs might be in LA and Boston, and whoever these tech folks they're going to need might not be here. What I'm suggesting is if they have 43 employees on that payroll register, and 10 of them are Sarasota County folks, we rip checks of $5,000 on the people that reside in Sarasota County. I'm not interested in giving $5,000 to somebody who lives in Boston, especially not my money. It's Sarasota County taxpayer money we're giving to somebody that lives in Boston. I'm out. I'm very, very much in, when you grab that report, for whoever has a Sarasota County residency there, I'm in. So again, I want to make that clear. I want to make this work, and I think it's as simple as making it contingent on those folks living in Sarasota County. And I'll give you one more testament to this, is that what's before us is that their lease space doesn't even get them through the first year and a half of the number of people that will actually work at the facility. They're remote working from somewhere. So right before us is the lease space isn't adequate to do 165 people. So, and I think it makes common sense. There are a lot of people that are working remotely now. I have employees in Tallahassee, and one just came back from Boston. It's just the way of the world now, but I'm not interested in giving Sarasota County taxpayer money to those folks living in other regions. So with that, Mr. Chair, I think I'm done.
Okay, we're going to have Commissioner Ziegler, then Kutzinger, but let me ask you a question, Commissioner Moran. So somebody who does move here from wherever, Toronto, and lands here and is employed here, we're all going to be fine with that qualifying for the incentive.
Mr. Chair, I welcome it. I encourage it. It is my mission is to get somebody to relocate to Sarasota County is absolutely the goal, if you ask me. What is not the goal is for somebody to do lease space on Longboat Key, hire an employee in LA. They will never set foot in Sarasota County ever. They won't go downtown for lunch. They won't buy a home. They won't spend sales tax money here. And we're going to give Sarasota County Sarasota County taxpayer $5,000 to somebody that lives in LA. I'm out. But I am very much of them relocating to Sarasota County or hiring our existing folks that are.
And we have the next two commissioners, Ziegler and Cutzinger, but let's also keep in mind, and that's your job, Erin, that it is our job with a $1.5+ billion budget to watch where the money goes. But for those ladies and gentlemen sitting in their offices in Canada that possibly are watching this, there is still some real delight that this is a possibility for us. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, so a couple things. I'm going to come back to exactly what Commissioner Moran was just talking about, but first, before I do that, I'll get the easy part out of the way. My understanding is they're excited to work with the higher institutions or the colleges in town. I would like to see them also work with our public schools, because I think that what they're doing with the content creation and being a platform for that, there's a real opportunity to get in front of kids in high school. And we always talk about the fact that, and it sounds good, but that not everyone needs to necessarily go to college. That people can go to the trades and arguably, I mean, some of those trades, if you don't go to college, you can actually make more money than college graduates. So I would hate to see them just limit their activity just to the higher ed. I would encourage them to work with the public schools. I know someone on that side that can probably help with that a little bit. But that would be incredible if they started infusing technology as a big player in tech into our local schools. And I mean, some of the best content that's being created, shockingly, is done by kids and, people 18, 16, 17, exactly the demographic that are in our high schools. And that would bring an added benefit. So I'm not going to force stipulate that. I would just hope, and I plan on reaching out to the CEO if this ends up getting done and basically having a conversation about that. Personally, I'd like to, hopefully you guys can facilitate that for me, but I think that's a real opportunity that would be huge for some of these kids that might get interested in that, see that there's money to be made, there's a company in town now. Maybe they don't need to go to college, but they can still work in that field and make, $80,000 or whatever the low end is on that we're looking at here. So I think that's a huge opportunity for our local schools, specifically up in the North Sarasota area that would be around this headquarters. Now, back to what Commissioner Moran's mentioning. Here's kind of the difficult thing about this is, yes, have to live in Sarasota County, right? Because this is a Sarasota project. I guess logistically what's tough is the headquarters on Longboat Key, and half of that's in Manatee County, right? So you're going to immediately limit where they can live in terms of proximity to the office. Now, I also so I get the residency side, but maybe what we need to decide is, number one, is it going to be based on residency or is it going to be based on going into the office, right? Now, so here are the challenges. On the residency side is it really is on the line, whether it's on Longboat or even across the bridge in the region, it's on the line between Manatee and Sarasota. And when you talk about housing, how difficult it is to find housing, they may need to live in Manatee to physically work in that office. Now, the question we have to decide is, do we still want our tax dollars covering someone that may live over the line but travel into Sarasota to work, but then end up having lunch in Sarasota, going to the shops in Sarasota, and they're still going to benefit our local economy, right? So that's kind of what's tough. So that's why the idea of maybe Sarasota, Manatee, Charlotte, they live in, maybe even South Hillsborough because of where it's located. I don't know. That starts opening up. So that's kind of a challenge when you look at the residency requirement because of where the location of this one is specifically. When it comes to looking at going into the office, I'll tell you, I know someone that works in the patent office. I talked to you about this, and they have a requirement that you basically can't work from home for longer than 30 days or 31 days, right? So every month you have to show up at the office, which sounds fine. But what they did is they ended up living in Florida, and they would fly up on the 31st and the 1st. They would get a hotel one night. They would fly up on the 31st, go pop into the office, stay in a hotel, pop in on the 1st, work out of the office, and then fly back to Florida. And they were flying up to D.C., and that checked the box that, okay, for 2 months, they've been working in the office, but really it was only 2 days, right? One night. So there's some challenges if you do inside the office. Now, what you have to take into account, and this is what's interesting, and I'm getting in the weeds, and I apologize, but I just want to lay it all out there, or you have hybrid models. There's a very successful company here in Sarasota, PropLogix. They have a big building that they bought in Sarasota County, just over in the UTC area, just south of University Avenue. And basically that building can hold hundreds of employees, 300, 400 employees. And once COVID hit, they were intending to fill the entire building. But once COVID hit, they sent their employees home, and they found out how productive they were working from home. So now I don't know if you're going to see that building filled with PropLogix employees anymore. But here's the thing. They go in there and they have meetings, and they still engage. And when they need to huddle with the accounting team or the sales team or the biz dev team or the marketing team, they can go in there. And this office may do that, may have sort of a model like that where, I could envision someone living, let's say Casey Key. They live in a house in Casey Key, and, they're working from home, but maybe every Monday or Wednesday or Friday, they got to go into the office. They go into the office, but they're still kind of remote at home, or maybe even over the Manatee line. But it's like a hybrid model where they can come into the office and have their meetings and get with the executives. And again, they're going to have lunch in our area that day. They're going to go to the shops maybe after work, stop and run errands when they're in Sarasota County, whatever. And then that's really driving the economic benefit for us. So if you just go to a working model, you also have to take that into consideration, is how do you avoid gaming the system to where, if you go to the working model, you say you got to be there at least one day a month, but then you come in on the 31st and the 1st, right? But you also need to be able to facilitate those that might buy a $700,000 house, as Commissioner Mayo mentioned. They're making their $200,000 to buy a $700,000 house, and yeah, maybe they're working from home, but guess what? They're spending a lot of money, in our local economy. So that's the challenges, and you got to navigate. I'm not I think the residency is tough because of where it's located, like I mentioned. So I don't really have a solution. I'm just pointing out some of the things to consider as we go forward. But I do think we need to give some sort of direction for this contract to come back to us with language that people are comfortable with on this board to be able to protect the investment dollars staying locally. I think that's clear direction we have to give. We can't just say, hey, we like this or whatever. I think probably today coming out of this, you need that direction to be able to incorporate it in the contract. So I just wanted to lay all that out there because I see it. But again, I think that this is a huge opportunity, but obviously I want all 165 jobs contributing to our local economy. If they're living here, that's a direct contribution every time they pay their taxes on their home. But the other ones that may not live here, they're still going to contribute to our economy as well, going downtown for lunch or, Dry Dock or Lombo Key Club, or, maybe they become members or whatever. So I think it's long-winded, but I just want to lay all that out.
It's only, we have Commissioner Cutzinger and then Commissioner Moran asked to make a motion.
I'll be brief. Two issues. Number one, if they relocate here and they're living here, it doesn't matter to me whether they come from Boston or Toronto or wherever, they're living here. So I have no problem with that. The second thing I was, just for discussion, would it be appropriate to consider the regional area that you discussed, Commissioner Moran, as if they live in that region, even though maybe they move here, they find a place in Manatee, ultimately maybe they're waiting for a house to be built out at one of our new 2050 developments or whatever's going on. There's things like that. And they are.
Cutzinger,
Yes.
I'm going to interrupt you.
Yes, sir.
Can I just put a thought out for all of our hearing? Let's not forget the regional aspect. I don't think I have a problem with, because let's not forget that many of our 2,500 employees live in Manatee or Charlotte County, and we don't prohibit them from working here. So that's another side slice of that. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, I appreciate that. But if their residency is not either in the region, whatever we decide, or whatever, if their residency is not here, I'm not supportive of, sending them our dollars.
Okay, we have Commissioner Moran, I think, who wants to make a motion, and you saw in that last comment, Erin and Ms. Kraus and Rob, a lot of head shaking on that last comment that was made. Commissioner Moran.
I'll take a stab at a motion here, and please feel free to do friendly amendments to this. Hopefully it captures what we're talking about here. We're on agenda item number 49, which is to approve an economic development incentive grant to assist Project Sunshine with expenses related to expanding the existing business into Sarasota County in an amount not to exceed $825,000, subject to the board's approval of a financial incentive agreement with the county contingent on new full-time employees residing in our regional market, which includes Sarasota County, Manatee County, and Charlotte County.
I'll second that motion.
Perfect. Okay, to your motion, Commissioner Moran, and then to your second, Commissioner Cutzinger.
Yeah, you mentioned it, Commissioner Mayo. It was like, again, a reminder, our economic development is in partnership with Manatee County and their EDC and Charlotte County's EDCs. The concept is supposed to have a regional draw. It's not a stretch, I don't think, at all. For people to live in Manatee County and come to work, as Commissioner Ziegler mentioned, and have lunch and, sales meetings and things. That is an economic driver for our community. Somebody sitting in Boston and LA and never setting foot here and us giving $5,000 is just bad business. But again, I'm open to friendly amendments to this, but I think it captures what we were talking about.
Commissioner Cutzinger, to
No,
your
I
second.
agree. I agree. I think we've already said, where we are on that. So, no, I'm very, very enthusiastic about this, and just really, I think this is exactly kind of the kind of businesses we've been looking for. I think this is a great way to, as Commissioner Mayo mentioned, kind of a reset at EDC. There couldn't be a better project to do that. So, thank you, Aaron.
Commissioner Dietert first, then Ziegler.
Okay, I kind of hate when we write things at the board table kind of on the fly. We could have just said, as negotiated by staff, but that might cause a delay that you'd have to come back a second time. So I will support this in the interest of, not delaying the process. Going forward, as Sarasota becomes more expensive, frankly, to live in, we can expect people to live in DeSoto, even Manatee, Charlotte, and drive in. So I think the solution might be to review whether we're going to pay for remote workers or not. If your headquarters is in Sarasota, I really don't care where you live. You can drive in from Arcadia if you want to. It's a long haul, but if you're going to make a good salary here and you can live way cheaper there, have at it. So, I would just plant the idea that moving forward, if you would look at whether we want to pay for remote workers or not. Because if they have to show up at least once a week, they can work from their home, but if they had to show up at their headquarters at least once a week, they pretty much have to live here. You've got to be making a really great salary to fly in, for one day a week. So I will support it as amended.
Commissioner Ziegler.
No, I think Commissioner Moran did a good job of tying this together. I'm good with the regional aspect. It's probably a deeper conversation that we have to have because of just changing work environments and situations, but also just the size of the region. I mean, Hillsborough is probably arguably, I believe it's closer, Hillsborough is closer to where this office is than Charlotte County, but we have this regional agreement with the EDC with the other three counties. I don't think we have necessarily, we look at it as regional with Hillsborough as much. They probably have their own situation up there, but that's probably a conversation for a different day that we have to have. I think this is exciting. Again, this is 165 jobs on average, $102,000 per job. You break that down, it's 124 jobs at 80, 41 of those jobs at 170. And we get a U.S. headquarters on Longboat Key. I think that's pretty special. And hopefully they incorporate with the colleges, but also the public schools. Please relay that because I think there's a huge opportunity in terms of sparking children's interest. And you never know the kids that are at risk that get interested in something like this when it comes to tech and they see an out Instead of being at risk, they start setting goals and accomplishments, and then they make a good chunk of change later on, and they're rewarded for that effort. So that would be exciting for me, but I will be supporting this, and then we'll have future conversations about other incentives as we deal with the fund balance in the future, but thank you.
Okay, and I will just add very, very briefly that I'm going to support this, and Rob and the Erin and Lisa, this needs to be brought back to each commissioner individually, maybe a half-hour discussion with the changes that you've made, and you may have to come back to us again, but we need to get this back in front of us for a final vote. And I just think that I think everything we've said, if you take all of it, the folks that are thinking about moving here should be seeing a very positive response from this commission. And I just add one last thought. I'm going to guess that all those salaries were put on a conservative side so that they don't trip themselves up. So I am going to strongly suggest that those salaries in each one of the gradations, each one of the classifications are really conservative and will end up being higher. With that, we have a motion on item number 49. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, chair votes aye, and that moves forward 5-0.